Rain had fallen for 3 days without pause, turning the town of Grayson into a gray blur of water and silence. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of wet wood and rust. The train that brought Thomas Halloway shuddered to a stop at the small station, its steam fading into the mist that crept from the valley below. He stepped down, adjusting the collar of his coat, his suitcase darkened by the steady drizzle. When the train left, the sound of its wheels was swallowed by the rain, leaving only the slow rhythm of droplets striking the platform and the dull hum of the river in the distance. He walked through the main street, lined with shuttered windows and sagging porches. Signs hung crooked above closed stores, their paint peeling like old bark. The town looked hollow, emptied long ago but still standing out of stubbornness. Water pooled along the curbs, reflecting the dim light of the single working street lamp that flickered like a tired heartbeat. Thomas passed a gas station with no attendant, a church with its doors chained shut, and a row of telegraph poles that leaned toward the horizon as if weighed down by time. The inn stood on the edge of town, a tall wooden structure with missing shingles and a rusted sign barely legible through the rain. Inside, the walls exhaled dampness. The corridors smelled of kerosene and decay. The floor creaked beneath his boots, the sound echoing faintly through the emptiness. The room he was given was narrow, but clean, its single window overlooking the valley and the dam that stretched across it like a wound stitched into the earth. Beyond the concrete wall lay the drowned remains of a settlement, one of the many built, then abandoned, during his father's great project 20 years before. He unpacked slowly, his hands still stiff from the cold. The lamp on the desk burned low, its flame trembling in the draft that slipped through the window frame. On the table lay his tools, a leather notebook, a compass, and a photograph of his father standing before the newly completed Hope Falls Dam. Beneath the image was the inscription, "For the good of all." The words felt heavy now, hollowed out by time. When the rain eased, he left the inn and followed the road that wound down toward the valley. The earth was slick and dark, every step sinking slightly into the mud. The closer he came to the dam, the more the world seemed to dissolve into mist. The structure rose from the fog, immense and motionless, its surface streaked with water that looked like veins on stone. The sound of the river was deep and constant, a low pulse that never stopped. He touched the concrete wall. It was cold, but beneath the hardness there was a faint vibration, as if something vast was moving within. Across the reservoir, through the shifting curtain of rain, he saw her. A woman stood on the opposite shore, dressed in gray, still and distant. Her figure blurred at the edges, made uncertain by the mist. For a long moment she did not move. Thomas blinked, and she was gone. Only the surface of the water remained, rippling softly as if disturbed by something unseen. Evening fell slowly. He returned to the inn, his clothes heavy, his boots leaving dark prints on the wooden steps. The light from the hallway lamps flickered along the walls, turning every corner into shadow. In his room, the sound of rain was joined by another rhythm, a steady dripping that did not seem to come from outside. It echoed faintly through the floorboards, soft and irregular, as though water was seeping through the house itself. He lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The glow from the lamp quivered across the walls, and the shadows seemed to breathe. He closed his eyes, but the sound grew clearer. Droplets, then steps, slow and deliberate, moving through shallow water. The air felt denser, charged with a presence that could not be named. He sat up, listening. The noise stopped. Outside the window, only the rain remained, endless and patient. The mist thickened beyond the glass, hiding the world. Thomas rested his head against the pillow, heart unsteady. For a moment, the silence was absolute, and then he thought he felt the faintest tremor beneath him, a pulse through the floor, as if something enormous was shifting deep beneath the water and soil, breathing in the rhythm of the storm. The morning was the color of dull metal, the sky a flat sheet of pewter pressed low over the valley. The rain had stopped, but the air remained thick and wet, carrying the smell of moss and machine oil.
Thomas drove the old truck down the narrow road that wound through the mist, its tires splashing through puddles that reflected the pale light. The forest on either side leaned inward, its branches heavy with moisture, and the sound of the engine was the only thing that disturbed the stillness. He passed a collapsed barn, its roof caved in beneath years of storms. On the porch sat an old man, wrapped in a torn coat, his eyes following the truck without expression. As Thomas slowed, the man raised one trembling hand and traced a slow cross in the air. Thomas drove on, his gaze fixed ahead, though the gesture lingered in his mind like a chill. The dam emerged from the fog as if rising from the earth itself. It stretched across the gorge, immense and gray, its face streaked with dark veins of water. Thomas parked the truck near the service station and began the climb to the upper walkway. The wind at that height carried a faint hum, a vibration that seemed to come from deep within the concrete. He moved slowly, boots clanging on the rusted grates, and inspected the seams along the surface. The cracks ran like lightning, frozen in stone, narrow but deep. Water oozed from them in steady threads, darkening the concrete as it spread. He reached the control platform. The levers and valves stood like relics of another age, each one coated in rust and moss. He brushed away the moisture from a brass plate bearing the date of completion and his father's name. His reflection wavered in the metal, distorted by the uneven surface. From his pocket, he drew the old photograph. His father, smiling, surrounded by workers, the newly finished dam gleaming behind them. Beneath the image, the words, "Labor for the Future," were written in fading ink. The edges were curled, the paper soft from years of handling. He stood there for a long time, listening to the low rumble of the water pressing against the wall. It was steady, but alive, a sound that seemed to shift with each breath of wind. Turning toward the reservoir, he looked across the gray expanse. The mist had thickened again, a moving wall of vapor that blurred the opposite shore. Then he saw her, the same figure, closer this time, standing at the water's edge. Her dress blended with the light, as if made from the same mist that concealed her. The air between them vibrated with the faint sound of rippling water. He blinked once, and she was gone. The surface of the lake was empty, calm, yet he felt certain something had moved beneath it. The day passed in silence. By evening, the fog deepened, wrapping the valley in shadow. Thomas descended to the maintenance level, carrying his tools and a single lantern. The stairs spiraled downward, the air growing colder with each step. The walls were slick, shining faintly in the flickering light. A constant drip echoed through the narrow corridor, each drop falling with perfect rhythm. The deeper he went, the stronger the smell of damp stone and rust became, mingled with something older, a scent like river mud and decay. The passage opened into a chamber beneath the dam, where the pipes converged in a web of iron. The water there was black, motionless, reflecting the glow of the lantern like a dull mirror. He crouched to inspect the floor and froze. A footprint, bare, delicate, unmistakably human, pressed into the thin film of moisture. It was recent, the edges still defined. Another followed it, leading into the tunnel beyond. Thomas raised the lantern, the light trembling in his grasp. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating only the wet stone and the slow drip from the ceiling. He took one cautious step forward. Somewhere ahead, faint but real, came the sound of breathing. It was slow, uneven, as if whoever exhaled did so from beneath the surface of the earth. He moved the lantern, but the sound ceased, replaced by the hollow echo of water striking water. He stood alone in the silence, the air heavy against his skin. The walls seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the dam, the pressure of the reservoir pressing inward. The light flickered once, casting shadows that rippled like waves across the stone. Then, everything stilled again. The air, the water, the sound. Thomas turned slowly, the lantern held close, and began his climb back toward the surface, each step carrying with it the sense that something unseen moved just beyond the edge of the light, following him up through the damp and whispering dark.
The night pressed close around the inn, thick with the smell of damp wood and old dust. Rain whispered against the windows, steady and unchanging. Thomas lay awake, staring at the ceiling, tracing the cracks that spread like veins across the plaster. The sound of dripping had faded, replaced by a different rhythm, the faint creak of footsteps along the corridor. Slow, deliberate, moving past his door. He held his breath, listening. The boards groaned once more, then silence returned, deep and absolute. After a moment he rose, the floor cold beneath his feet. When he opened the door, the hallway was empty. The lamps flickered weakly, their glow swallowed by the dark. Only on the wood beside the handle remained a clear, wet imprint of a hand, as though someone had touched the door just moments before. The mark glistened briefly, then began to fade. Morning came colorless and heavy. Mist covered the town, blurring its edges until everything looked half-submerged. Thomas loaded his equipment into the truck, the metal cold and slick beneath his fingers. The engine coughed and came to life, echoing through the hollow streets. He drove toward the dam, past fields drowned in fog, and telephone poles that leaned toward the earth, their wires humming faintly in the wind. The world felt emptied of sound except for the slow churn of the tires through mud. He reached the dam and crossed to the far side, following a service path that led toward the old settlement. The road narrowed, vanishing beneath overgrown ferns and moss. Long strands of rusted wire hung from leaning poles, their ends swaying gently like strands of forgotten memories. Every few steps, the ground gave way to shallow pools where the forest reclaimed the past. The silence was so complete that the sound of his breath seemed intrusive. The remnants of the settlement appeared gradually, a row of decaying wooden frames, roofs caved in and doorways sunken into the earth. In the center stood what remained of a church. Its steeple had collapsed, and the walls leaned inward as if exhausted. The rain began again, light at first, tapping against the broken glass of the windows. Inside, the air was still and cold. On the cracked plaster of the wall, words were barely visible beneath layers of mold and soot. "Beware the water." The letters seemed scratched in haste, uneven and desperate. Thomas stepped carefully over fragments of benches and debris until he reached what had once been the altar. There, scattered across the damp floor, lay remnants of lives long gone. Photographs curled from moisture, pieces of children's toys, rusted tools, helmets marked by the initials of their owners. He knelt, brushing aside the dust, and lifted a photograph from the pile. The image was faint, but clear enough to see. A group of workers stood before the newly built dam, and beside them a woman in a light dress, her expression unreadable. His father stood beside her, his hand resting near her shoulder. The back of the photograph bore a faded inscription, "Evelyn, 1917. The ink had bled into the paper, but the name remained legible. The air grew heavier, and thunder rolled from the distance, echoing through the valley like the roar of a collapsing wall. Rain began to fall harder, drumming against the roof and spilling through the holes in the ceiling. Thomas tucked the photograph into his coat and hurried outside. The path that had led him there was already half flooded, streams of brown water cutting through the moss and soil. He tried to reach the truck, his boots sinking deeper with every step. The rain became a curtain, and visibility shrank to only a few feet. The sound of rushing water grew louder. He looked toward the flooded road and froze. In the torrent ahead, something moved against the current. Slow, deliberate, almost human in shape. For a heartbeat, it seemed to walk beneath the surface, its form distorted by the flow. And as lightning flared across the sky, he saw the pale outline of a woman's face turn toward him. Her features blurred, but the eyes were unmistakable, fixed on his. A jolt of fear and disbelief struck him. His foot slipped, and he fell hard into the mud. The world tilted, sound and sight breaking apart into fragments. The rain hammering the ground, the taste of soil and rust on his tongue, the thunder dissolving into a distant hum. The figure vanished with the next flash of light, leaving only the water surging past and the echo of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He remained there, half submerged, breathing hard as the storm closed in around him, erasing all traces of what he had seen except for the single photograph pressed against his chest, soaked through, but still intact.
Evening settled over the town like a damp shroud. The rain had stopped, but the air was still heavy with the smell of wet wood and silt. Inside the narrow room, Thomas sat on the bed, his lamp casting a dim circle of light across the faded wallpaper. The sound of the river below was constant, a low murmur that seeped through the walls. Spread across the blanket were the blueprints of the dam, their edges curled and stained from years of handling. He traced the lines with his fingers, following the intricate veins of concrete and steel, the careful geometry his father had once called perfection. As he turned one of the folded sheets, a small envelope slipped free and fell onto the floor. The paper was brittle, its color faded to a pale brown. The ink had bled from time and moisture, but the words were still faintly visible. It was addressed to his father, the handwriting elegant but trembling. The signature at the bottom was smudged beyond recognition, yet clearly written by a woman's hand. Thomas leaned closer, reading what he could. "You should not have done this. The water will not forgive." The words seemed to pulse faintly in the dim light, as if the ink itself remembered the fear that wrote them. He sat motionless for a long while, the letter resting in his palm, the silence of the room pressing against his thoughts. The lamp flickered once, dimmed, and recovered. Outside, the mist had thickened again, wrapping the town in a shifting, colorless fog. He rose, pulled on his coat, and stepped into the night. The path to the dam was slick with moisture. Every sound seemed magnified, the crunch of gravel beneath his boots, the whisper of wind through the reeds. When he reached the top, the moon hung low over the valley, fractured by the clouds. Its reflection spread across the water like shattered glass, glinting in uneven fragments. The dam itself seemed to breathe, the steady pulse of water pressing against its base. The morning sky was the color of dull tin, flat and without depth. The air carried the scent of wet earth and distant decay. Thomas left before dawn, the letter still folded in his pocket, its weight impossible to forget. He followed the road that wound behind the dam, where the land sloped toward the drowned valley once known as Hope Falls. The trees grew denser there, their branches slick with moisture, their roots tangled like veins in the mud. Each step sank slightly, the sound muffled by the thick carpet of moss. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as though unwilling to remember what lay beneath it. After an hour, the trail narrowed into a hollow that opened toward the water. The remains of the old settlement had long since disappeared, swallowed by the reservoir. But here the ground dipped into what had once been a graveyard. Half-buried stones jutted from the mud, their surfaces softened by years of rain. Names and dates, carved by hands long gone, gleamed faintly beneath a film of algae. Fallen leaves floated in shallow pools, drifting slowly between the tilted markers. The silence was immense, broken only by the distant sigh of the wind moving through the reeds. Thomas stepped carefully among the stones, brushing away the moss from one of them. The letters beneath came into focus, dark and uneven but unmistakable. Halloway. Beneath it, a date, 1917. His own name carved into the stone, the year blurred but clear enough to see. For a moment his mind emptied, filled only with the sound of water. The air thickened, the surface of the flooded ground seemed to shift, rising imperceptibly, as though the earth itself was breathing. He turned slowly. Around him more stones emerged from the shallow water, dozens, perhaps hundreds, all bearing the same year. The writing on them varied, some nearly erased, others still sharp as if carved yesterday. A slow ripple spread across the water, widening in concentric circles. The sound was soft, almost tender, but beneath it lay something vast, something that moved with purpose. Then he saw her. Evelyn stood among the sunken graves, her figure pale and motionless. The water reached her knees, yet her dress did not move, and her reflection seemed deeper than the surface could hold. Her face was calm, almost sorrowful, and her eyes glowed faintly beneath the thin veil of mist. She raised one hand, and the water around her began to stir. Bubbles broke through the surface, then fragments of metal and bone followed. Helmets, tools, rusted chains, the remnants of those who had worked and drowned here. The past rose piece by piece, each relic glistening before sinking back again into the dark. Thomas fell to his knees, the weight of understanding pressing against his chest. The truth settled over him like the water's cold embrace. His father's dam had not only buried a river, but an entire settlement beneath it. The people who had built Hope Falls had never left. The flood that marked the dam's completion had taken them all, sealing their graves beneath its concrete. Evelyn had been one of them, one of the first, perhaps the last. The wind rose, carrying with it the scent of wet stone and iron. The trees bent slightly, their branches trembling as though the land itself remembered. The water surged higher, lapping at his boots. Somewhere deep below, the earth groaned. Thomas stood, unsteady, and turned toward the dam. The decision formed in him with the clarity of instinct. He would open the gates, release what had been trapped. Whatever lay beneath deserved to breathe again. He began to run. The path back was almost invisible now, consumed by fog and rising water. Each step sank deeper into the mud, and the sound of his heartbeat merged with the rumble beneath the ground. The air vibrated with a low hum, a resonance that seemed to come from within the dam itself. Behind him, the flooded valley churned as if resisting, the water twisting and coiling in defiance. The forest around him shivered, the mist pulling apart into ribbons of gray. Thomas stumbled, caught himself, and pressed forward. The outline of the dam loomed ahead, massive and motionless against the ashen sky. Beneath its calm surface, something was alive, restless, waiting. The earth trembled once more, faint but certain, and the sound of it followed him like a pulse rising from the depths.
The storm had grown into something alive, a vast, roaring presence that consumed the night. Lightning tore open the clouds, illuminating the valley in violent flashes of white. Thunder followed like the shattering of stone. Rain fell in sheets so dense that the world dissolved into movement and sound. Thomas drove through it, blinded by water, the headlights swallowed by the darkness ahead. The road to the dam had become a river of mud, and each turn threatened to pull the truck into the ravine. He abandoned it near the last bend and continued on foot, the wind tearing at his coat, the ground trembling beneath the relentless weight of rain. When he reached the dam, it loomed before him like a dying giant, its face streaked with torrents. The concrete vibrated under his boots, the sound of pressure deep and unbroken, as though the structure itself was groaning under the strain.
The air smelled of ozone and metal. He climbed the stairs to the control deck, every step slick, his hands gripping the rusted railing. The water on the other side rose almost to the brim, a black expanse whipped by the storm, reflecting the fractured light of lightning strikes. The levers and valves were half buried in rust. The mechanisms that had once obeyed his father's precision were frozen in place, fused by time and neglect. Thomas grasped the main release handle and pulled. It did not move. He tried again, the metal biting into his palms, his muscles straining. A grinding sound echoed from within the wall, followed by a long metallic groan. The handle shifted slightly, then stopped. He planted his feet, rain cascading over him, and forced it upward with everything left in him. The lever gave way suddenly, jerking free with a shriek that cut through the roar of the wind. Deep below, machinery stirred for the first time in decades. Valves screamed, steel shifted, and the sound of rushing water swelled like a living voice. The pressure broke. A surge of black water exploded from the sluice gates, tearing into the gorge below. The dam shuddered from the force, its entire body vibrating as if struck from within. Cracks spread like veins through the concrete, glowing faintly white in the lightning's glare. He stumbled back, clutching the railing. The air was filled with mist and the metallic scent of earth tearing open. Through the chaos, he saw her. Evelyn stood a few paces away, not an apparition now, but solid, her form outlined in the storm's light. Her hair clung to her face, her eyes calm and unafraid. The wind did not touch her. For a moment, she seemed part of the storm itself, born of the rain and memory that surrounded them. Thomas met her gaze, though no words passed between them. The dam beneath them groaned once more, a deep, final sound, and the cracks widened into fissures. The walkway split, one section tilting toward the churning water. He reached for the nearest beam to steady himself, but the metal tore free with a scream. The wall buckled, then broke. The world became water and noise. The dam collapsed inward, releasing the valley it had imprisoned for 20 years. The flood roared down the gorge, tearing trees from the ground, crushing the remnants of houses and bridges, erasing everything that had stood in its path. The force of it was unimaginable, a single, endless motion of release. Thomas stood until the last instant, watching the water rise to meet him, his body trembling not from fear, but from the recognition of what had always been waiting beneath the surface. The final surge struck, sweeping him away with fragments of stone and steel. For a moment, he was weightless, surrounded by light and water and sound. The storm consumed all shape and color, and then there was only the rhythm of the flood, a deep, unending breath. When the water receded, the valley was silent once more, the dam gone, the river flowing freely through the ruins. Only the echo of rain remained, soft and patient, as if the earth itself was remembering. The storm had grown into something alive, a vast, roaring presence that consumed the night. Lightning tore open the clouds, illuminating the valley in violent flashes of white. Thunder followed like the shattering of stone. Rain fell in sheets so dense that the world dissolved into movement and sound. Thomas drove through it, blinded by water, the headlights swallowed by the darkness ahead. The road to the dam had become a river of mud, and each turn threatened to pull the truck into the ravine. He abandoned it near the last bend and continued on foot, the wind tearing at his coat, the ground trembling beneath the relentless weight of rain. When he reached the dam, it loomed before him like a dying giant, its face streaked with torrents. The concrete vibrated under his boots, the sound of pressure deep and unbroken, as though the structure itself was groaning under the strain. The air smelled of ozone and metal. He climbed the stairs to the control deck, every step slick, his hands gripping the rusted railing. The water on the other side rose almost to the brim, a black expanse whipped by the storm, reflecting the fractured light of lightning strikes. The levers and valves were half buried in rust. The mechanisms that had once obeyed his father's precision were frozen in place, fused by time and neglect. Thomas grasped the main release handle and pulled. It did not move. He tried again, the metal biting into his palms, his muscles straining. A grinding sound echoed from within the wall, followed by a long metallic groan. The handle shifted slightly, then stopped. He planted his feet, rain cascading over him, and forced it upward with everything left in him. The lever gave way suddenly, jerking free with a shriek that cut through the roar of the wind. Deep below, machinery stirred for the first time in decades. Valves screamed, steel shifted, and the sound of rushing water swelled like a living voice. The pressure broke. A surge of black water exploded from the sluice gates, tearing into the gorge below. The dam shuddered from the force, its entire body vibrating as if struck from within. Cracks spread like veins through the concrete, glowing faintly white in the lightning's glare. He stumbled back, clutching the railing. The air was filled with mist and the metallic scent of earth tearing open. Through the chaos, he saw her. Evelyn stood a few paces away, not an apparition now, but solid, her form outlined in the storm's light. Her hair clung to her face, her eyes calm and unafraid. The wind did not touch her. For a moment, she seemed part of the storm itself, born of the rain and memory that surrounded them. Thomas met her gaze, though no words passed between them. The dam beneath them groaned once more, a deep, final sound, and the cracks widened into fissures. The walkway split, one section tilting toward the churning water. He reached for the nearest beam to steady himself, but the metal tore free with a scream. The wall buckled, then broke. The world became water and noise. The dam collapsed inward, releasing the valley it had imprisoned for 20 years. The flood roared down the gorge, tearing trees from the ground, crushing the remnants of houses and bridges, erasing everything that had stood in its path. The force of it was unimaginable, a single, endless motion of release. Thomas stood until the last instant, watching the water rise to meet him, his body trembling not from fear, but from the recognition of what had always been waiting beneath the surface. The final surge struck, sweeping him away with fragments of stone and steel. For a moment, he was weightless, surrounded by light and water and sound. The storm consumed all shape and color, and then there was only the rhythm of the flood, a deep, unending breath. When the water receded, the valley was silent once more, the dam gone, the river flowing freely through the ruins. Only the echo of rain remained, soft and patient, as if the earth itself was remembering.